Good evening, culture lovers, oi oi, and welcome to Bushell On The Box, the show that makes Lee Anderson look like an indecisive bets hedger. Today I'll be asking questions most are afraid to ask, like, what was the point of the jury murder trial? After 4 hours of telly, all it proved was that people with big personalities can have more impact than timid folk.
Who knew?
Actors reenacted the real trial of John, a mild-mannered sculptor who'd killed his wife Helen by bashing her about the head with a lump hammer. We knew he'd done it, but was it murder or was it manslaughter due to loss of control? The trial played out in front of two different juries who weren't aware the other one existed until the very end. As no facts were disputed, jurors were steered by their feelings. Helen, it turned out, was manipulative with mental health issues and had fallen for goading and tormenting her exes. One woman sympathised with John as soon as she heard that Helen had called him fat, because her husband had done the same to him. She didn't deserve to die, she said, but she was asking for it. She knew what she was doing. Really? Asking for it? One man sympathised, saying he had thrown crockery and a cup of coffee at his wife when the red mist came down.
She then ran him over. Odds on there were more skid marks in his underpants than there were on the road.
Another bloke, who had been separated from his children, didn't want John to suffer that same fate by going to prison, while a female juror believed the others were victim blaming. Ricky the builder, who was gung-ho for a manslaughter verdict, was a big personality.
Did you clock his Tom, his jewellery? He must be worth about 10 grand in scrap.
But here's why it was iffy. The jurors were clearly picked for their backstories to make good TV, rather than randomly selected as a real jury would be. In fairness, they took it seriously, but it wasn't a proper trial because they knew they were on camera. Real jurors aren't supposed to chat about the trial outside the jury room. They're sworn to secrecy. And there was no summing up from the judge. So this wasn't a serious social experiment. It was just the latest spin on reality TV. Its real purpose was to grab ratings. The show said experts reckon juries get it wrong 25% of the time. How can they know? The continental alternative, where guilt is presumed and the case is tried by a judge or judges, is far worse. In the event, one jury said it was murder, the other decided for manslaughter, as the actual real-life jury had done.
When I die, that's exactly how I want to go. Hammered.
Bad taste, yes, but beer is beer. I enjoyed Amazon's reality comedy Jury Duty a lot more. It owed a debt to The Truman Show. Affable Ronald Gladden thinks he's taking part in a documentary about the jury duty process, but everybody involved is an actor except for him. Ethically dodgy maybe, but open-hearted Gladden really comes out of it well, and it was one of last year's funniest shows. You know what winds me up? Comedians on Question Time. Why? Why not have fire eaters or jugglers? People who live in cities, who drive large off-road vehicles for no discernible reasons. Film censors putting the boot into poor old Mary Poppins. And the volume on adverts being 30 decibels louder than the programmes you've just been watching. Here are my top 7 TV lawyers. Rumpole with a Bailey, Raymond Burr's Perry Mason, Denny Crane on Boston Legal, Jackie Charles, Seinfeld, Saul Goodman, Better Call Saul, James Spader's Alan Shaw, Boston Legal, and Alicia Florrick, The Good Wife, with Matlock mentioned in dispatches. The best British TV jury was the one in Hancock's Half Hour, inspired by 12 Angry Men, an absolute comedy classic.
Ken Morley once put me on trial for crimes against television. That was in the last episode of Bushell On The Box on ITV. I was accused of product placement. That's outrageous. It's something I swear on this bottle of Wolfie's whiskey I absolutely abhor. Have you read this book, by the way? I wrote this in 2010 and I'm still waiting for the Chinese that Jimmy Jones promised me. That's probably it. It'll be cold by now.
In a related story, a rather good documentary, Jimmy Jones, Now This Is a True Story, is now showing on Ustreme, doing justice to one of my favourite funny men. Well done to Ustreme for keeping the legacy alive. Cutting edge audio tech made David Attenborough's secret world of sound a real joy. We saw bumblebees buzzing like living tuning forks as the bees' wings made the whole insect vibrate to shake pollen loose. The Sky Nature show also followed a pod of dolphins who used sonar clicks to find eels in the seabed off the Bahamas. From the lion's roar to odd noises of shrieking hyenas, Attenborough revealed a hitherto hidden world of animal communication.
And for those who love the magical sound of an old cow grunting, Joe Brand is back on telly next week. And don't forget the mating call of the East End cat. She's the one with the sourpuss, an unusual critter. She stays out all night and isn't too fussed which bloke serves her up the cream.
Got to be honest, my own hearing isn't what it was, so I'm trying to learn sign language. So far, I've mastered bullshit, bollocks, and old cunt, which by coincidence sums up most of the candidates in the Rochdale by-election. Signing is fraught with dangers. One poor girl trying to communicate pizza to her grandmother made this sign, which means something very different unless the pizza has a topping of tuna and a side order of anchovies. The latest episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm opened with an anonymous letter of grievances pinned to a golf club notice board with a bullet point list of complaints. The food, the dress code, the lack of benches, etc., and signed Disgruntled with a capital D. Larry naturally got the blame, but he's small d disgruntled, not big D. He's particularly disgruntled with his irritating other half, Irma, brilliantly played by Tracy Ullman, who tells their couples counsellor about Larry's very low-hanging scrotal sack, adding that when he goes to the bathroom in the night, I hear them slapping on his thighs. It sounds like a flip-flop in a Mexican resort. A beautiful image. It ended with a neat Spartacus throwback, because let's face it, small d or big D, we're all disgruntled these days.
Can you be small d disgruntled about having a small d? I mean, I'm asking for a male comedian friend who says he's the only man alive who suffers from penis envy.
R.I.P. Curb's Richard Lewis, who died while I was writing this. Brooklyn-born comic Richard was the man who pioneered the use of the phrase "from hell," as in holiday from hell, woman from hell, husband from hell. And he wrote beautiful one-liners like, I'm paranoid about everything in my life. Even at home on my stationary bike, I have a rear-view mirror. And R.I.P. to hairy biker Dave Myers, a lovely and much-loved man. I only found out he'd gone when I saw his motorbike for sale on eBay. You know what I can't stand? Cliches on restaurant menus, like fresh, simple ingredients. As opposed to what? Stale old leftovers? Gotcha. And when it says homemade meals, I don't want a homemade meal. That's the reason I've gone out in the first place.
I said to the waitress here, is this meat locally sourced? She said, yeah, it's come from Lidl and that's only round the corner.
It's time for this week's Mysteries and Questions. Are bikini waxing strips just a rip-off? Are bath towels the major cause of dry skin? Could an art fraudster get done for money laundering? And in EastEnders, Nish was planning to use Cat to con Phil out of his fortune. What fortune? What does he even own these days? Not the Vic, not the Arches. I think he has half a share in Peggy's Bar and a bit of a share in a barely used gym. Not exactly Canary Wolf. Yet somehow, he always has 50 grand in cash tucked down the back of his settee. One final lookalike, me and Popeye's opponent, Brutus. Fair enough, we both love travel. The difference is, I never got to Mount Olive. Oi, oi, that's your lot. Next time I'll be talking about Shogun and the crisis in children's TV.